Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 10 of the 40 Days and Nights podcast. This episode is a continuation of our conversation with Mary Clare because we talked about a lot of stuff.
I'm so sorry. I never shut up.
So if you enjoyed what we had to say for the first episode, definitely keep listening to see what we had to say for the second part of our hour-and-a-half long conversation. I think, would it be okay if we switch gears a little bit and talked a little bit about accessibility and your heart for seeing theological education and faith formation, something that's not just for people officially in ministry? What a concept.
Oh my goodness. Amazing. You mean me? Yeah. So I said I want to go to a seminary and terrified of becoming a pastor because I don't want to. I don't want to. And I feel like if you have any interest in, God or anything, and you like to do a lot of research, they're like, you should be a pastor. And I'm like, I would run the church into the ground. I'm terrible at money and organization. And I'm a little selfish sometimes. And so I wouldn't do good if someone calls me up and they're like, hi, I need pastoral care. And I'm like, but I'm doing something. I don't know. Maybe that's just an area. It's definitely an area for growth. But I don't know. My gifts definitely lie more in the teaching realm. So the idea of being a pastor, the thing that's alluring to me is the sermons. And that's it. So I feel like that's not a good enough reason because there's so much more that goes into being a pastor. So what I want to do is create content for people to watch or to read and encourage other people to do this kind of research and this deep dive into faith, and that just because they're interested in church history doesn't mean it has to be their whole job. It just means that they want their faith to be as well-rounded and rooted in things as they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's it kind of feels like people, it's like the church has taken away agency from people who aren't roster leaders, like pastors or people in official ministry, to do things independently. It's theological education has to come through an officially ordained person. And it's why aren't we giving people the tools and resources to become theologically educated alongside those people rather than it being dependent on someone else?
And I understand the want to have people have theological training, because then I would not want a pastor who hasn't been to seminary, So if you want to be a pastor, you have to go to seminary, you have to know the stuff, but I don't think it should be exclusive to just pastors, and not everyone has the pastoral gift. It's a very distinct set of skills. And also, if more people know the theology and can engage in these conversations, I feel like the less lonely pastors would be. And they're less likely to feel isolated and have people look at them as more than human, which is very dangerous for either their ego or for their families. And then they can also be they can be pastored to when necessary, and they're not alone in faith crises. And I think that's another thing of normalizing that they're on a faith journey too, just like the rest of us. And sometimes it's even messier because they have all this knowledge that they have to work through and wrestle with. I know Alyssa Childers, Children, oh, what's her last name? The lead singer, a Zoe girl. She's like a big advocate against progressive Christianity because she's one that I can actually like respect a little bit in it, because she had a brush in with it where she had a pastor and she really liked how intellectual it was, and then he like took them into like a small circle and was like, hi, I might be agnostic, and like I want to have this like small circle of people to like talk about all this stuff with. And it scared the shit out of her. She was like, oh my god, like this pastor is like teaching these people but like might not actually believe in God, like or not God, but like not actually believe in the same God and like Jesus that I do. And it's because it's not normalized that like pastors and people in leadership can have vulnerability, that then it scares the flock. And my heart goes out to her and whoever her pastor was at the time.
The loneliness, I think you hit really well, because I mean, the only other people pastors can like safely talk about their faith with is generally other pastors, and you have to be very careful with that too, because of the way, at least in the Lutheran church, like if your bishop found out that you were like struggling or something, like then there's going to be a whole inquisition and all this
Oh
stuff,
my
and like you
god,
can't
are we in Spain in the
basically
whatever that was?
a long time ago. I think it was
16th
1400s.
century? I don't
That was
know.
close.
Are we in Spain thinking people are witches again?
But yeah, because you can't talk to your parishioners about that stuff. Like, there has to be some level of, I don't know, like the situation you just talked about, like that was like a red flag for me. Like, but it's because of the way the system is set up that the pastors don't have people there to talk about that stuff without it turning messy.
Mhm.
So I'm making a YouTube channel. And specifically for people, the oldest people that I'm speaking to are like around y'all's age, of like mid-20s, and the youngest like high school. And I'm sure that'll change as I get older. But like people who are in like the throngs of their faith, that it's okay to wrestle. It's also partially like I'm taking a youth ministry class this semester, and just faith formation is so like it has to be approached with so much care. Like there are so many factors that go into it. And a lot of times I feel like it's done just so poorly. It's either just games, or it's beating your head over with the Bible, or it's my youth leader who hated kids. And he told us he had that. Oh my gosh, this is another story. At that same conference, he was like, I like can see visions, and I see the visions for your lives. And we're like, oh my gosh, like, can you tell us? And he was like, no. I was like, what? That's a weird power move.
I have the knowledge and you don't.
Yeah. I feel like that's a lot of like with pastors and stuff. It's like I have the knowledge and you don't. But also I have to wrestle with this, and like I can't tell anyone about it. It's just like a secret society. Also, not knowing all the full information until you get higher up is a sign of a cult. So I'm trying to make Christianity least like a cult as possible.
Well, like I felt that like even being in seminary of like when I took like our confessions class and had to read the Book of Concord for the first time, and I didn't know that half the stuff that was in there was in there. And I was like, I literally just, I felt like I got Jesus juked, just like being in an evangelical ministry where I didn't know what the actual doctrine was until I got high enough in leadership. And I felt so awful. And like, I could not imagine like what it would do to people's faith if people knew the extent of what was actually talked about in the book that we're supposed to like hold as our doctrine, because I can't think of like one ELCA pastor that from the pulpit teaches that people are going to hell, but it's there and we don't talk about it. And if people were to read that for themselves, I think that it would shake a lot of people's faith and be like, why is this there and no one told us? I know I was really upset when I read it. It was like, why did I not know that this was there until now when I saw it for myself?
I did something similar, but it was like when they were talking about how they were condemning like the Anabaptists or whatever because they were like anti-military or whatever. I'm like, well, I agree with them. And I would just like write it in my book. Because like you're saying, like, because the church in the past and now is associated with the government, and the government likes to keep things from the people too. Mm-hmm. This gatekeeping of information that, I mean, I'm thinking about it from the perspective of the Lutheran Church as a whole. So we all have that blue book and we're all supposed to agree to the things in there, whatever. But not everybody knows what's in there. And if they found out, then they would leave, most likely. They would say, well, I'll just find another church that isn't condemning everybody to hell if they don't believe in Jesus or whatever. Like, and this is just something I've been thinking about for the past 2 days. So like, I'm like trying to figure out like what that means of like knowing that the denomination I'm a part of kind of is doing some spiritually abusive things of like, you can't know this until this point in your life or whatever. And it's not like a pastor has the time to teach their congregation the Book of Concord. The thing's like 700 pages long. Like, and nobody I know is going to sit down and read that thing. I didn't want to sit down and read that thing. How do we teach people? YouTube.
I don't know if I want to read the Book of Concord.
Oh, it's interesting to put
I'm not even technically Lutheran. I'm just, my home church closed. So my like church membership is just like to the UMC as a whole, which makes me feel a little icky. So I'm Christian.
Like, I think something that like I'm still like kind of upset about and wrestling with is like knowing that the place that I'm at, like the congregation or the denomination that I'm a part of, is like contributing to the same things that I literally left a whole community over. I literally left an entire community, my whole support system, over like largely that, like a few other things, but largely having to do with keeping information from people until they got to a certain point in leadership, and then just getting like punched in the face with like, oh, we actually don't like gay people, sorry. So it's just like, I'm still not okay with it. So what are we gonna do about it?
Oh my God, ask me my own question. Y'all, Mickey, you oh my gosh, you have a dream that you would do anything? Okay, well, you all could draft me a script for a YouTube video so I don't have to read the Book of Concord. I can say you wrote it, point people to your podcast. I'll be like, so this is why we shouldn't be a cult. That's an option for you all. You're in the system. You can try to change the system from within, or you can leave the system, or you can go through the system, get your frocks, then leave the system. I don't know. I'm always very hopeful for the future of the church when I talk to all my seminarian friends. And it's the reason why I want to go to seminary. I say I want to be friends with a bunch of pastors, but I don't want to be one.
And like, I think that the church needs to be more and more okay with the fact that a lot of the upcoming spiritual leaders aren't going to be full-time pastors. And like, that's okay. And I think we need to diversify spiritual leadership. And I don't know, it's like the same thing with like how there's, when you think about a classroom and one teacher being responsible for 40 kids, like, people are going to get left behind, and then people get upset that kids got left behind. And I feel like we're kind of seeing that now, of like, we wonder why there's rampant biblical illiteracy and why faith formation in the American church is so shitty. Like, our faith formation is awful. Like you said, like, youth programs, so bad. Like, it's either just games or guilting people and telling them not to have sex, and that's it.
Instead of being like, here are some tools that'll help you engage in the world. I feel like that's what faith formation should be. It should be a healthy, loving community, and helping to give you tools and to teach you like what Christianity is and like what the rituals mean, and then giving you tools to navigate the world.
Mm-hmm.
I'm taking an entire class on that essentially right now. Like, my Christian education class is literally just a faith formation class. And it's been really helpful because, like, I went into seminary wanting to incorporate intergenerational groups because that's what the church is. And like, siloing people off into little sections just doesn't create community for the entire community. And I mean, the whole idea of like kids go to Sunday school until they go to their confirmation class, and then they're confirmed, and then they don't come back until they have their own kids who get baptized. And then like, it just creates these things that don't indicate that faith formation is a lifelong journey. And I don't know how, I mean, at least the Lutheran publishing house is like, they're doing better about incorporating intergenerational groups in their curriculums. But it isn't as widespread as I would like it to be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a goal of mine, is to encourage faith formation as a journey and not a rite of passage or a ritual.
Mm-hmm. Nick, I know it was really interesting, like Lenny Duncan, when he was speaking to Capital, kind of like was talking about this because he's starting a revolutionary seminary class. It's like very much like about this, of just
Guess
like,
who signed up for it?
like, it's basically a seminary class for people who aren't in seminary, like with the same level of expectations with reading and conversation. And he was just kind of talking about like, this is literally what we're supposed to be doing. Like, we're not supposed to think that our job is so high and mighty that other people can't do it. Like, we're supposed to be willing to be like replaceable and teach other people what we're doing. And that's literally what discipleship is. And I was just like, well, how much healthier would the church be if it was like this collective idea of people building each other up, rather than 200 people all relying on the same person to be built up? Like, what if it was everyone's pouring into each other, helping each other grow, helping each other wrestle, learn? Like, the church would just be so much healthier. there'd be so much more accountability. Maybe we'd actually live out our faith and not just be in a building for 1 hour on a Sunday. Like
Maybe pastors wouldn't get as burnt out.
Yeah, that sounds nice.
The trick is trying to get people excited about learning. It's the thing with my YouTube videos, I'm like, oh, hopefully these aren't boring.
I think people are hungrier to know than I think that the church gives people credit for. And I feel like there's such a focus on finding the particular people to send to seminary, but like I feel like everyone is like looking for figuring out how the Bible was put together and wrestling with that and why we believe what we believe.
I think providing people the agency to take some of that learning into their own hands and creating a relationship with the pastor that isn't one-sided, where they just like get stuff from the pastor, but they're also like interacting with the people in the church who lead. And like you said, Mariah, like the whole point is to get people to replace, or maybe Mary Clare said that. One of you said to replace the people, because that's the whole
Mariah.
point. Well, because I mean, I'm going to retire someday, hopefully. That's a desire of mine. And if I didn't create a model of discipleship that encouraged people to form their faith or learn anything, then that particular congregation is going to have to find someone else. And I don't want that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Like if the ministry falls apart because someone leaves, like it was not done correctly, and I feel like, I don't know, I could be wrong, this could make some people mad, but I feel like we're seeing that now on a large scale of the church is dying because there's not enough pastors. And if the church is dying because there's not enough pastors, I don't think that we did what we were supposed to. If it's so dependent on a particular group of or subset of people for the entirety of the functioning of the organization to continue on, I don't think that it's functioning in a healthy way or how it was meant to work. I don't know. That could make some people upset, but
I'm not upset, but I earlier in this podcast said heresy schmeresy, so it is what it is. No, but I mean, part of that is because that's what happened in my church.
Mm.
And it's in the UMC, so our pastor who like started it from our like mother church or whatever, like when she was moved, they brought in a pastor that was supposed to grow it, and he tanked it, and then it died.
Were there leaders within your church that like had been raised up before, or did this pastor just kind of like and just ruined everything? Like I'm intrigued about like the original pastor being moved to a different church and then someone else coming in.
So part of it was, the church was fairly young.
Okay.
Only like a few years old, and so people just moved on basically. We just had like we didn't have very stable leadership in the youth program, for worship leaders, the children's program. Even the board switched up a lot, And I just disagreed with the pastor theologically. He kind of regurgitated the same couple of sermons over and over again. And so my faith formation was sitting next to my friend Jessie and writing down what I didn't agree with and why, or if I did agree with something, or how I wish she had taken the sermon. And she did the same, and we just kind of like would nudge each other and like point to our notes. I've stormed out of church twice, both of times when this person was preaching. I think that I looked like, people probably just thought I went to the bathroom, but I thought I was hot shit. Yeah. And like a lack of like relationship with the congregants. There's a lot of things.
That's unfortunate.
And this is what happens when you get 4 or 3 Enneagram 4s into.
We just talk for a while and we're like, but like feelings.
Wow. That's a lot of 4 energy.
There is.
It really is. So much 4 energy in here right now.
Someone thought I was an 8 the other day just because I say burn it to the ground a lot. And I think things should change. I was like, no. I feel things so deeply. I get existential way too much to be an 8. I can't. I just have a lot of 8s in my family who challenged me a lot and made me grow a thicker skin than I think most. Mariah, what made you a 4? I think like 8, it's not that like 8s make 4s. I think just like sometimes like they both feel deeply, but they like 4s think about their feelings too much, and and 8s act on their feelings.
I don't know. Like, I've always been super emotional, and I've always been the kind of person that has like an existential crisis at least twice a week, where I'm like, I'm sitting on a spinning rock and my life doesn't mean anything, and am I actually living, or is life just passing me by? Happens.
Give me that significance. I am not like other girls.
That's how I felt the entire summer. Working in a hospital was just like people dying, and I'm like, what happens when I die? And like all of this dumb stuff like that I didn't need to worry about.
Just me literally last week looking at Christmas lights outside my window being like, what if God doesn't exist? Like, jeez.
I think I've gotten to the point where like I'm so comfortable being uncertain about anything and everything that it's like getting into an unhealthy point at this juncture, because I'm like what if I uncertain myself out of what I believe, and then I don't know.
Oh, I did that this summer.
Cool.
I gaslit myself a lot. It was really bad. It was really, really bad. It's possible. I don't recommend it. I found like with discernment, so there's like good unknown. And when it's good unknown, I have a general sense of like peace feeling. I'm like, what if this is kind of like the cadence that the question goes? When it's bad anxiety doubting of like the 4ness gone too far, it's just like, what if this and what if this and what if this? And it goes so quick that all of a sudden it's just the words what if repeating over and over again. I'm like, oh, so that's not it. That's the bad questioning. And then there's good questioning. Not all questioning is good. It's good depending on how it makes you feel. If it gives you a sense of like comfort and like wonder, that's like the Holy Spirit questioning. if it makes you want to tear your hair out, I feel like that might be the enemy, just making you do flips.
Yeah. This week's existential crisis was brought on by reading about Mary, the mother of Jesus. Don't know if you saw my tweets. I had to read Luke 1:26-38 for one of my projects, and I have to write a sermon about it. It's the Annunciation. And I've just been thinking more and more about, like, in Christianity, like, we have to believe that Mary was a virgin in the sense that there had to be the divine element of Jesus, otherwise he was just fully human, and it just got too much for me. And so I started tweeting about it because I'm tired of people calling her a woman when she was like 13, and she also didn't call herself a virgin, so maybe we shouldn't call her that. So that's where I'm at. Merry Christmas, Happy Advent.
Also, like, she was 13, so she could have been, she could have not been. I feel like we place way too much emphasis on her virginity rather than, like, the Magnificat. I feel like that should be the main thing.
You mean the point when she's talking about how we should, like, upend empires and care about oppressed peoples? Nah.
Yeah, I was reading that the other day and I was like, Papa.
Right?
I was like, I'm excited to share a name with you. Let's see. Let's refer to the text again. I'm sorry, this episode's gonna be so long. Let's see. Magnificat's in Luke, right?
Yes.
Look at me being Bible
I think it's
literate-ish.
44b is where it starts.
There it is. Oh, it's so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how my soul praises the Lord, how my spirit rejoices in God, my Savior. For he took notice on his lowly servant girl, and from now on all generations will call me blessed. For the Mighty One is holy, and he has done great things for me. He shows mercy from generation to generation to all who fear him. His mighty arm has done tremendous things. He has scattered the proud and haughty ones. He has brought down princes from their thrones and exalted the humble. He has filled the hungry with good things and sent the rich away with empty hands. He has helped his servant Israel and remembered to be merciful, for he made this promise to our ancestors, to Abraham and his children forever. Like, we need more songs of praise, y'all.
And songs of protest.
We just need more songs.
Yes, just start singing.
Like, I've been thinking about this so much this year of, like, the protest songs from, like, the 60s and 70s were so good. We need more of those right now. Like, so great.
We'll just start singing the Magnificat. Well, not shocking, we've diverged quite a bit.
So surprising.
We did pretty good, though, when we were actually focused.
All right, thanks, friends, for tuning in. I believe that this is our last episode for the very first season of the 40 Days and Nights podcast. So thanks for listening, and we hope that you have a wonderful Christmas.